Good afternoon and welcome to this ChemCareers 2021 webinar, which is sponsored by CK Science, CK Group Recruitment Agency. And this afternoon we're going to be talking about applying to become a fellow. So we're going to cover detail around the process of application. We'll also hear from a couple of fellows who have been through the process. And we're also wanting to use this opportunity to really highlight the opportunities to technicians who may be considering what opportunities are available to them, and really highlighting the sort of breadth of experience that could be evidenced as part of an application to become a fellow. So my name is Laura Woodward, and I am a Careers and Professional Development Advisor here at the Royal Society of Chemistry. And I'm going to ask each of the panel members to just quickly introduce themselves, who they are and what they do. So perhaps Hannah, starting with you.
Yeah, hi, afternoon. I'm Hannah Ash. I work in the membership department at the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I'm the membership application specialist. So if you apply for membership, maybe fellow, your application will come through to me, and I will review it, process it, and make sure that it progresses through the right stages. And
Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the Vocational Skills Programme Manager. I work within the Accreditation and Careers team. Part of my role at the RSC involved kind of developing our Technician Commitment Action Plan and signing the RSC up as a supporter of technician commitment. And it's out of that kind of initiative and set of activities that we thought it'd be a good idea to run this webinar today.
Thanks, Katie. And Rob?
Hi everyone, Rob Wyber. I'm Technical Director at a company called Tennant's Fine Chemicals. You may not have heard of us, but we make chemicals for the flavour and fragrance industry. So lots of things are going to day-to-day, finer fragrances and etc. will probably come from our little manufacturing site in Leek in Staffordshire.
And Ian.
Hello everyone, my name's Ian. I work for a company called Johnson Matthey. We're a specialist chemical company. We've got interests in catalysts, material science, pharmaceuticals, batteries, fuel cells, etc. I've worked for the company for 20 years, roughly half and half split between research and development in the earlier part of my career and more latterly in manufacturing, having roles such as the laboratory manager and now more technically supporting our manufacturing assets. So it's the support of existing products and the introduction of new products and the improvements of the process, etc.
Brilliant, thank you. So like I said, we're going to cover these areas here this afternoon. So outlining the process to apply, perhaps chatting about some practical examples of evidence that you might use or highlight. And like I say, we'll hear from Rob and Ian about their experience of the process. And I'll also talk about the support that's available to you if you're thinking about applying, and what's available to you. Before we go on to the sort of the practical process of applying, which Hannah's going to talk us through, perhaps Rob, I can start with you around, what prompted you to become a fellow, and why did you feel that professional recognition was important to you personally?
Okay, I think I'll probably have to start really early on. It's slightly unrelated, but my dad was an accountant by trade, and I remember when he had his fellowship, it was a really big deal. He had certificates up on his wall, and obviously for people who've used accounts, it's basically the mark by which you would go on for a professional accreditation, if you like. And I work in an industry as well where we work with lots of chemical engineers, and it feels very similar to that. So knowing that the fellowship was out there for my profession, I really wanted to, after my chartered chemist, really wanted to work to that next level. So for me, it was achieving something that, although in chemistry is probably not perceived as such a technical recognition, it is out there, and it is something that people do look at. I've had several times where people have come and said that they can actually use that chartered chemist and the fellowship as an accreditation of my skills. So it might not be professionally recognised as an accountant, but definitely, you know, within the industry, it's recognised as something really to strive for. I've also been someone who wants to work to that next level and look for the next thing to sort of test myself. And after doing that chartered chemistry, the fellow was the next, you know, logical progression, as I sort of moved up throughout my career.
Brilliant. And Ian, same to you. What prompted you to apply, and why did you feel that recognition was important to you?
Well, funny enough, my story is very similar to Rob's in a way. That my father went to university. He was a chartered engineer, and he became a fellow. And I remember, you know, it was a big deal. So it was always sort of there in the back of my mind. I guess as a chemist, I've always sort of valued, you know, trying to do the best in my profession, and I really think professional standards are important, and where better to go than the Royal Society of Chemistry, but as a sort of home of professional standards and the development of the subject. So when I did my, I was a chartered chemist many years ago, but kind of, you know, as you progress within your career, started to think, well, am I kind of ready for fellowship? And the more experience I got, the more I thought, well, yeah, maybe it's the right time to apply. But again, it was that ability to sort of test where you are versus your peers really was something I was looking for. And speaking personally, I felt fantastic when I was awarded the fellowship. I thought it was a really good thing.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you both of you. It's good to kind of get that insight of, you know, why that recognition from your professional body is so important. Hannah, I'm going to pass to you now to perhaps kind of talk through a bit around the sort of the process of application. Anyone who's listening in, there will be opportunity at the end to ask questions, so do feel free to sort of type those in as you think of them, and we'll try and get through some of those at the end. But over to you now, Hannah.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So applying for fellow is very similar in the process of applying for the other categories of membership, in that you complete a application form and you submit it with your CV and your nomination of 2 referees. What we look for in a fellow application is different to what we would look for in, say, a member MRSC application, where MRSC is around, you know, looking at those qualifications and your postgraduate experience. Fellow is looking at quite specific areas. It's looking at a level of seniority. It's looking at impacts that you've had within the chemical sciences or within your organisation, and it's looking at that contribution that you've had to, again, the chemical sciences or your organisation. So there are a number of ways that we do award fellow. One is around that senior level, you know, that's your company directors, your full professors, but we do have a significant amount of fellows that maybe don't necessarily meet that seniority level, but are making that significant contribution impact to organisation or chemical sciences, and that's another way of being awarded through the contribution. So I was just, so the graphic that you can see on here just shows you going through the progress through the different applications, through the different categories of membership. So you've got associate member and fellow. So fellow is classed as our senior level of membership. You can be chartered as well as a fellow. You don't have to be chartered to become a fellow, but it's an option that's there for you. And you don't have to go through from affiliate, associate member to fellow. You can apply directly as a new applicant straight in at the fellow level. I'd say the process for application is you need to complete application form, which you can do online. So if you're already in membership, you can apply to upgrade through your membership profile. So logging in and clicking that upgrade membership button, filling in the form, attaching your CV and giving the nomination of 2 referees. If you're not a member, that's absolutely fine. As I said before, you don't have to go through the categories. You can apply directly to Fellow, and all you need to do is go to our website, click into the join membership, and fill out the Fellow. Click on Fellow and click out the Fellow application form. Again, it's CV, nomination of 2 referees. The CV, I would advise looking at. It's not necessarily the same as applying for a job in the CV that we look for. It's all around the detail that's in the CV. So the more information that you can put into your CV around your job, around the the level of seniority, if that's applicable, the contributions that you're making, the impacts that you're having, publications, if you're first author, lead author on those publications, that all helps, that all works in your favor of drawing out that information and really showing us what your role is and how you're making that contribution. I would say as well that your roles could be quite unique to you. I say it's quite a niche area of technicians, but it can mean a broad, it can mean different things in different organizations. So your role could be quite unique to you and your organization. So don't assume that because you write the word technician, we necessarily know what that means. I would advise you to treat us, the admissions committee, as we know absolutely nothing, and just provide that information, that detailed information around what you do on a day-to-day basis, what impacts and what contributions you're having to your organisation. I mentioned the admissions committee. So the admissions committee is a committee made up of peers. They are a mixture, mainly fellows, but there are a couple of MRSCs on the committee as well. And they review fellow applications, membership applications also. They'll review associate and member, but they'll review a lot more fellows at their meetings. And so that's where they're looking for that detailed information that's unique to you, that's showing that you are working at that level of fellow, that you're making those contributions, impacts to your organisation and to the chemicals, broadly to the chemical sciences. CV advice. I'm assuming, Laura, you want me to talk around CVs?
You can, or I can. I don't mind.
Yeah,
You've touched on most of it, but
yeah, so I will pass over to Laura because she's more of the expert on drawing out that information within the CV. But as I say, you can. We do encourage people, if you are thinking about applying for fellow, do get in contact with us, send us your CV, email it into us, and we can advise you at the time before you've applied whether you're at the right level, if you're maybe slightly premature, you need a few more years experience, if you're not quite in the right area, but we can advise what the next steps would be for you. So if you're thinking about it, do get in contact with us and just have a conversation with us, and we can advise you from there. But I'll hand over to Laura to talk around what to put on CVs.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Hannah's just said, that CV kind of needs to look a bit different to perhaps a more traditional sort of chronological CV where you're talking about sort of job titles and things like that. As Hannah said, kind of work on the assumption that the committee don't know anything about your organisation, don't know anything about your particular role, particularly as Hannah said, where actually maybe your job title doesn't fully reflect your sort of level of responsibilities or the impact that you make. So make sure you're including things in there that really kind of make those things very clear. And like Hannah said, do utilise either me or Hannah. So you can either email careers@rsc.org or fellows@rsc.org, and Hannah and I will happily look at CVs to kind of help you think, am I nearly there? What other things do I need to be thinking about? Actually, we can have conversations with you to kind of draw out things that you might have evidence for but just haven't included it on that application. So So do utilise that before obviously getting to the point where you're, you know, paying your fee to upgrade. You know, that support is there, so do utilise that support. You know, and other things here. I don't know, Hannah, if you want to sort of touch on those in a bit more detail in terms of things to be sort of evidencing on their application.
Yeah, particularly around, you know, if you're that internal expert, you're the go-to person that people come to, put that in your CV, put that information in there, because you say we won't necessarily know that. You know, if you're that technical expert, add all that information in, you know, put detail, as much detail as you can put into it. You know, when it comes to things, if you are a budget holder, you might not be, that's absolutely fine. But, you know, we don't need exact figures. You know, it can be ballpark, you know, roughly what you're a budget holder of. Put that detail in about strategic development, how you've planned something, how you've grown it, what the outcome of that was. These are all things that are that the committee really pick up on when they're reviewing applications. And putting that information in there is more likely to get an outcome on your application there at the committee, rather than us having to come back to you to get more information and then it having to go to the committee again. You know, it just delays the process for you. But if you're able to put that information in, then please do. And as Laura and I have said, you know, do utilise us. We are more than happy to, you know, look at your CVs beforehand, you know, help you tweak them if it's needed before you apply, because there is a £100 application fee, which is non-refundable. So, you know, I encourage everybody to contact us first to make sure that you are at that level and you stand the best chance of your application being successful, rather than, you know, paying that fee and then losing it if you maybe not at the right level or you're slightly premature in your application.
I think you touched on some of these already, Hannah. I don't know whether you want to add anything.
Yeah, as you know, I think there is a conception that people think that fellow, you know, is just for those senior managers, those directors, you know, company owners, and it's not the case at all. It is one of the factors, yes, that we do look for, but it's not the only factor, and it's not the deciding factor. So we have many fellows that are awarded through their contribution. They could be, you know, that expert within their company, the go-to person. And that's their contribution. They're making that impact through their knowledge. You know, people on their senior management teams may not be able to make the decisions they're making without your technical expertise. So do keep that in mind. Don't be put off by thinking, oh, I don't hold budgets, I don't manage people. That's not, you know, that's not the same for everybody. You know, what you may be doing in your company will look completely different to what somebody with the same job title, for example, in a different company. You know, so just bear in mind that everything is sort of unique to you to a degree.
Before we move to sort of, thanks Hannah, that was really helpful. Before we move to questions from the audience, perhaps Ian, I can ask you how you found the application process and whether you found anything particularly challenging, and if so, how you worked around that.
Yeah, of course. I think it is hard work, and particularly if you haven't applied for anything recently, which was the case for me. So, you know, updating that CV information, and I thought of it more than just a CV in a way. It was almost the information that you put in a CV plus all of the sort of information or the explanation you would give, almost like in a job interview. So yeah. I ended up writing about 10 pages in total, because really you want to try and put what your achievements are into context, so that anyone unfamiliar with you, as has already been said, can understand what your contribution and the breadth and the scale of that contribution was. I guess it is quite challenging, because you've kind of got to big yourself up. You've got to think about how you kind of and sometimes, you know, the skills that you may almost take for granted, other people might think, you know, you do quite well at those. I mean, I didn't do this at the time. I did spend a lot of time thinking around that and trying to really, you know, if you will, sell and tell the story in the best way possible, so that someone unfamiliar with me could get a grasp of what I'd been involved in and what had come out of that. I guess one way, just thinking about it before this meeting, would be maybe in retrospect, maybe ask some colleagues around you, you know, what is it that they've seen in you. Might be a good idea, because you have really got to kind of, it's more than just a CV for me. I think I didn't fill out the CV when I applied. It was more structured questions that were part of the application process, but they, to really kind of explain them fully, it needed quite a lot of detailed explanation.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think you make, you know, some really valid and useful points there, Ian. I think particularly around, you know, I think many of us probably struggle to kind of, you know, like you say, big ourselves up and sort of effectively kind of sell ourselves, but actually, you know, that is what you want to do to that committee. And like you say, you know, taking that time to really reflect. You know, maybe it's, you know, you're not thinking about becoming fellow in the next 12 months, but actually you could sort of put things in place that help you start thinking about what skills you currently have and reflecting on those skills and perhaps areas that you want to develop. Because I think, like you say, particularly when you're, you know, entrenched in a job and doing your work, those skills become second nature to you, and you sort of forget about, you know, actually they're really valid and really important skills. So thank you for those points, Ian. Rob, anything that you would add around how you found the process of applying, and anything that you found challenging and how you worked around that?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Without sounding like Ian and I read off the same script, then I completely agree with him. Mine was slightly different. I literally was looking at a new job at the time, so my CV had been updated. So one thing is to make sure your CV is updated. So because I'd just done that and I had an up-to-date CV, I actually submitted the CV with some additional supporting information. And basically, for the roles that I'd done over the previous 5 to 7 years, put some key learnings and experience at the top, like little headers to myself, and then went through, as Ian saying, like a bit of a story going through. I think it's, as Ian said, looking for things that not necessarily, you know, a special. You might not be the one person in, you know, the world or Britain that does this, but something that's key to your business. I, for example, when I was at Peakdale, was heading up research, but I also looked after QC and analytical, and I was looking after IT at the time. I was looking after the stores team. So it was all these things that were not just my general day-to-day role, but I was taking a complete business view, if you like, trying to make sure it was running. So I think it's all these things that make you who you are. It's a bit not only like the hard skills of your life, there's a lot of the softer skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that I found probably hardest is because I wasn't aware that you could almost submit something for a, you know, how do you think? Like you were saying before, I think that'd be really useful to have known in advance. Maybe that's my fault for not asking the question, but from the Chartered Chemist, where you have your 14 statements, if you like, that you have something to go for, it's quite defined, whereas actually with a fellowship, it's a bit more about working at that not a different level, but like a different state, isn't it? You're not looking at things that are working towards a set of goals. They're what generally makes you special, especially within in the field of chemistry. So I think from that perspective, I think, you know, it is about you and what you bring to the, you know, you know, chemistry as a whole, internally, externally. Do you take part in webinars? Do you tweet a lot? You know, there's all these things that will just give you that extra level and will show to the administration's application committee that you warrant that title.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, you know, it's just worth reiterating that point that, you know, there is that difference from CChem, which, like you say, has very set things that you need to demonstrate and evidence, whereas perhaps for fellow, and perhaps Hannah, you might want to add to this, you know, there is that degree of flexibility because, you know, you can be having that impact in a variety of ways, and we don't want to be too set in kind of a tick box exercise, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with fellow is there's not one size that fits all. A fellow can look different, depending on the person, and each application is unique and is reviewed based on its own merits. So, just don't be put off by if somebody else in your organisation is fellow, but their job's completely different and they're more senior. Don't be put off by that. Just think that everything is unique to you, and you could be having that impact contribution in a very different way to anybody else, and that's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't be awarded fellow. It just means the application would be looked at in a very different way. So there is that flexibility in that it's not one size fits all. We look at a broad spectrum of things.
Brilliant, thanks, Hannah.
I think that's a really good point, Hannah, because why not be that first person? If there's no one in your industry, in your business, I was the first one at Peakdale to do the Chartered Chemist at the time. I know several people have followed afterwards. Why not be that first person? Why not get those letters after your name that no one else has got? From a selfish perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. Katie, can I perhaps just ask you this sort of final sort of formal question, if you like, which is around just, I guess, thinking about the people that you're engaging with their sort of focus perhaps on a more technical background, whether you could just perhaps highlight perhaps some either specific experience or sort of general experience that might be relevant to just help someone understand that becoming a fellow could be something either to apply for now or something to aim for in the future.
Thanks, Laura. I think some of the interactions and conversations I've been having around the technician commitment, certainly. I've been working with a lot of HE technicians, and there seems to be a feeling that because they are not necessarily leading on research and development or research or development, that FRSC is not something that's open to them. And even people who are in those very senior roles, so perhaps somebody who's the sort of chief technical officer at a university and has lots of professionally qualified staff reporting into them, they're not aware that FRSC is open to them, because they think it's only available to people who are doing this sort of cutting edge research or and are leading on those research projects. When actually, and as you guys have covered, that really isn't the case at all. There are so many ways that people, particularly those working in education and in technical roles in education, are having a really important impact in terms of the chemical sciences. Yeah. Be that they're supporting the education of kind of the next generation of chemical scientists, or perhaps they're playing a really key role in managing the instruments for a research lab or something like that. These are all examples of people having really positive impact and making really positive contributions to the overall kind of chemical sciences. So I think as people have said before me, it's always worth submitting your CV to the team to get reassurance that actually yes, you could apply, or you may need to rephrase things in order to have a successful application. Because as I said back at the beginning of this as well, the whole reason that we wanted to run this webinar was around the work that we're doing with the technician commitment. And for those of you that aren't aware of the technician commitment, there's kind of 4 strands of activity, and one of those 4 strands is recognition, and another one is visibility. And so the idea of encouraging people in technical roles to apply for FRSC all kind of fits with this idea of enabling and supporting technicians to get the recognition that they deserve for the really, really important work that they're doing, and to raise the visibility, because yes, if you are the only technician in your company that has the letters FRSC after your name, chances are people are going to ask about that, and it raises the whole profile of the technical workforce just through you having received the designation. So I'd really encourage everybody who's thinking of applying to submit a CV and have a team look at it to get that support.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. And yeah, absolutely. You know, do send those in either to me or Hannah. You know, we can not only just look at has it got all the information there, but also perhaps, you know, chat through with you, help you kind of pull out the things that are relevant. You know, we understand what the panel will be looking for. So yeah, absolutely do utilise us. I've had some questions asked. If anyone else wants to ask any, please do so now. They're kind of sort of application type questions, Hannah, so probably for you. The first one is around well, they're both around referees actually. So what weighting does the referee have in terms of the process? How much weighting do they get? And also someone asking, they don't work with any fellows of the RSC, so who should they be using as a referee?
Okay, so not working with FRSCs is absolutely fine. Ideally, your referees would be fellow, but we appreciate that's not always possible for everybody. So it's not a hard requirement. If you are in an organisation where there aren't any other members, then someone like your line manager, colleagues, collaborators, people that know your day-to-day work, you know, your role, are aware of your work and what you do, and are able to provide that information around your suitability to becoming fellow, is who we're looking for. The impact that the referees can have can be quite substantial. I've sat in admissions committees where the applicant really hasn't provided, you know, much information at all in their CV, but has been awarded based on what the referee has said, because the referee has provided that detail that the applicant hasn't. So they can hold quite a lot in what they say. So think about that when you're choosing your referees. So they don't have to be fellows. The only thing we would say is not to nominate somebody that is a direct report to you. So, you know, anyone else that's working at your level or senior is what we're looking for.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you. I've not had any other questions, so I'm just going to finish now, other than to say, you know, thank you to the panel. Thank you to Rob and Ian for your contribution today. And really, yeah, just to remind you, generally, that support is there in terms of checking your CV for application to fellow, but also more generally, there's lots of careers and professional development support that I provide along with my colleagues in the rest of my team, and you know, that could be one-to-one consultations. It says in person, but obviously that's not happening at the moment, but by phone, by Skype, by Zoom, you know, we're still able to provide support, talk about, you know, career planning. So like I said, it might be that actually you know, a bit like Ian and Rob said, you know, early on in their careers, they knew fellow was something that they wanted to aim for. You know, even if it's not an immediate thing that you're going to be focusing on, you know, we can help you think about how to incorporate and think about those sorts of things. And we also run a mentoring scheme. If you want to know more about that, getting support from another member, and all those things are available to you at any stage of your career. So just drop us an email at careers@rsc.org. I've just had a couple more questions. Will the slides be available? Yes, absolutely. If you would like a copy of the slides, just drop me an email at careers@rsc.org. There will also be a recording available of the webinar. You should be sent it automatically once it's been uploaded, but if not, it's all on our YouTube channel, and if you just Google ChemCareers YouTube, you'll find it on there. Hannah, just one last question. Someone's saying that obviously due to COVID restrictions in education, their role hasn't been the same this year, so can they use evidence from previous years?
Yeah, so we're looking for 5 years at that senior level, 5 years working at the fellow level, we would say, so whether that's the contribution or the seniority, that 5 years can be at any point in your career. It does not have to be, you know, the 5 years from this year previous. So any point in your career is fine. It's just demonstrating that you have worked at that level.
Brilliant, thank you. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you to the panel for joining us this afternoon. And like I say, if you need anything else, just drop me an email. And thank you all for listening.
So that I think was good.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.